Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of the Matchday Preview. Jonathan Harrison, you're joined once again by Manny Lagos. Manny, how you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Got a home game coming up, and we got a great guest today. So excited.
Yeah, looking forward to the final regular season home game of the season. And as you mentioned, great guest today, Kyndra de St Aubin, joining us from MLS Season Pass. She'll be on the call this weekend on MLS Season Pass. Kyndra, how are you doing? You've had a busy week. You've been in and out of Florida, watching Chicago play a couple times over the past couple days. So how are you?
I'm great. I can't complain. I did a quick workout class this morning and I was thinking about it. I can't complain because I ran on the lake of Chicago, the shore on Saturday, and then, next to the beach in Miami. So there are worse things I could have been doing when I'm in the middle of working. So I have zero complaints and it's a beautiful day here. So all good.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. We've got plenty to discuss. We'll talk about those two Chicago games you were on the call for, and just a crazy one on Tuesday, Kyndra. But first, let's start with the U.S. Open Cup, Nashville beating Austin. Manny, your thoughts on the game and the run Nashville had to the title this year?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I felt like it was Austin's storybook kind of run based on their result against us, based on the result in San Jose when they had 0 shots and 2 PKs, and then obviously, we have to give them so much credit for pulling that win out against us. And I thought we had a lot of adversity to deal with, and I thought we were at least going to go to PKs, and they figured out a way to win that game. And so them hosting, you would think they're kind of slightly the favorites, but Nashville's been good all year. I mean, they've got some great depth. They've got a great goal scorer. They've got a great kind of, I don't want to even say he's a setup guy. I think he's just a really good high-level MLS kind of creative and goal scorer himself. And they figured out a way to win the game. So, it was credit to them and congratulations, Nashville. First trophy, I think, in MLS since they joined. Yeah, so well done.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, though, when you say depth, Manny, like I remember doing Nashville earlier in the year, and even at that point, Surridge and Mukhtar had like 99% of their goals. And I was like, if one of those guys goes down, like they're toast, but they just keep doing it. Even if you look at the goal sheet last night, like, so are you talking about depth in the whole roster for other positions? Because from like a goal scoring perspective, if you don't have Mukhtar and Surridge, like are they
Yeah,
like
no, I'm
screwed?
talking about they kind of have two special players, like, and some teams don't have that. I mean, again, I would even argue Austin ran out of offensive ideas at home more than Nashville. Like Nashville always felt like they had chances to break out. Shuffleberg's been really outstanding this year, and they've just, I think what Callahan has done is short up their defense, which has allowed Mukhtar and Sturridge to kind of shine. So you're right. I mean, you've got two of the better players in the league in different ways. One's just a pure goal scorer. The other one, I've always said Mukhtar is sneakily been such a great player in the league because he does so much more than just score goals. He really commits himself to finding space, to creating, and kind of always being dangerous. Obviously, he scored last night, but overall, I give a lot of credit to Nashville. They've built a really good team. They built a team that has two very dangerous players that came through at the biggest moment for your club.
Yeah, they've been fun to watch. As you said, Kyndra, Surridge and Mukhtar have 38 of their 55 goals in regular season play this year. It is ridiculous how good those two guys are on this goal scoring end, and how little they need from pretty much everybody else on the roster to stay competitive as they've been in the Eastern Conference. Elsewhere across the league last night, Vancouver
Bro,
completed.
is that it? We're done?
Yeah.
With the US PK at all?
You can talk about the PK. Yeah, go ahead. What'd you think of it?
I think it was the right call reluctantly. I kind of wish it didn't happen because I don't like those kind of big calls, deciding championship games. But I also know that the drama of what happens in boxes, it's hard for it not to be called. So I guess I respect the call and it's the right call, but it's also a harsh call to win a championship.
Kyndra?
I agree, but it is what it is. Like you can't adjust based on this situation, right? And it's hard as a ref not to do that because emotionally you're probably, as much as they all like to tell us, we do all these pro calls. Oh no, we don't think about those things. And it's impossible. You're human. But I think you would make that call any other time, right? In any other game.
Yeah.
It's that, but it's just tough to lose. Nobody wants to see a game be decided in that way just because we're all competitors and we like to see it happen differently, but it is what it is.
Yeah, you know what, kind of just my brain just went to our game and how maybe Austin was playing with fire with these calls because the kid should have been kicked off against us, kicked out to Anthony, and should have been a red, and it wasn't. So they had not only did they have kind of a storybook run, but they had kind of like a run of calls not go against them that built up. And as harsh as it was the right call. I just don't understand why you're grabbing the guy like that and pulling his shirt in the box.
Agreed.
Jonathan, did you have an opinion, or are you just asking questions?
I'm just asking questions on that one.
No,
I'll be honest. I did.
No.
I'll be honest. I did not watch the U.S. Open Cup final.
Okay.
I was still heartbroken after the loss a couple weeks ago.
I'll give you that's a better answer then. Okay, that's a better answer.
And I was still a little sore from it, and couldn't bring myself to watch it. Maybe I'll watch it later.
That's why we're moving on so fast. I get it.
I'll be honest. I'll break the fourth wall there. I still was a little sore. It was like the Vikings when they lost in the NFC Championship game. I can't go watch. I can't go watch the following Super Bowl. It still hurts a little too much. So that's why I moved on quickly. Is because I didn't watch the game.
I respect that. I respect the honesty. I was a fan. I was a fan at that game at the Minnesota United loss. It's like literally standing right in front of the brew hall. So on the end where the goal was scored, and I just looked at Addie. I'm like, as soon as that ball went in the back of the net, I'm like, let's go. Like, I was all ready to watch PKs, and I was like, dang it. So I get it.
Yeah,
I love the U.S. Open Cup
session the next day, Kyndra, as we did the show.
I bet you did.
Was it
that was Kevin Egan.
Kevin Egan, yeah, he helped us get through it. So,
and that was less than 12 hours after that game. That was a tough one, but yeah.
No, I usually, like I said, that they the nice thing is this is an extension of the kind of season Nashville's having. I mean, they're doing really well in the East and a very tough conference of the East. So it's kind of been a great year for them on a lot of levels now.
Yeah, absolutely. I usually watch the U.S. Open Cup final because I love the tournament. I just couldn't do it this week. Speaking of the Eastern Conference, Kyndra, you've been calling a couple games over there recently, more notably Chicago games, and you had one of the crazier games of the season. 5-3, a Chicago win over Inter Miami, jumps them up to, let me pull up the standings, 8th place in the Eastern Conference, a big win there, jumps them over Columbus, solidifies that New York won't make the playoffs for the first time in 16 years, but that was an incredible game on Tuesday night in Miami.
What I think about that game, and even if I would have been watching it as a fan and not doing it, is if you had on your bingo card that the goals were going to come from Davila, Dean, Kwame, and Reynolds before Gutierrez hits the banger, that could have been maybe goal of the week for sure in my mind, just the way he struck that in against Miami in an important moment to really seal it. Like that to me is important because Greg Berhalter, I've done a lot of Chicago this whole season, and his whole mantra and his vibe and his message is he has incredibly high expectations for this group, but also focusing on each performance and the progress of the team. He doesn't get too high with the highs. He doesn't get too low with the lows, at least to us. I don't know. I'm sure he's fired up in the locker room, but I just think that they're on this upward trajectory at the right time now. In that game, we just talked about it with some injuries and, Franco going off in the second half. That could be a big miss for them. Davi looked real shaky in that second half, whereas he was so solid in the first half in the previous couple games, and they had been high on him. So we'll see how they come out of it. But yeah, that was a crazy game. When Miami took that 3-3, I just thought, and Miami was on the front foot. They had the energy. Their guys, their quote unquote guys that you expect started to look like they were feeling it. And I thought Chicago was doomed, but they pulled one out. It was a crazy game. It was fun to watch.
You know why you felt that way, Kyndra?
What's that?
You know why you felt that way?
Why?
Because the Chicago team for the last almost 15 years has shown that in those moments, they tend to lose those games. And
oh, yeah.
We kind of exercise some demons. I would even say against us, although we did have a altered lineup, but that game almost went 2-1. And I still think they would have struggled to see the game out just because historically they've been they're much better than a 9th place team. We're now 8th place. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
But they are being challenged. And they're, to your point, Greg's rising the challenges here. He's building a group that's, much better defensively than they've ever been at the end of the year. and they have one of the better front fours in the entire league, and it is an outstanding front four. So, it's funny how soccer brings up your strengths and weaknesses. And that game that in Miami brought up both for Chicago. They are awesome offensively. There's always been question mark defensively. Since Waterman's coming in, it seems like it's been shored up. And winning that game, I think just you brought up two things, Jonathan. You brought up Chicago, who are going to make the playoffs. They might even make a run and get a little bit higher up there where they feel even more confident. And I think we're talking about Chicago because it's been rare to talk about them at this time of the year for almost 15 years, a lot. And then the Red Bulls, ironically, beat Chicago 4-0 in 2017, the last time they made the playoffs in Chicago. And the Red Bulls are now officially, what a great run, though. 15 years of playoffs is amazing. Around the playoffs. So it's all of it was wild. And we didn't even talk about Miami, which is they're now probably officially out of the Supporter Shield. And there will be questions about the age of their roster in the playoff run. Probably that first series is probably the most dangerous for them, given that they don't look very good on short rest with all the old guys having to play that many minutes.
Miami can technically still get the Supporter Shield. They've got 3 games left, so they can finish on 65 points, which would be 2 higher than Philadelphia, but they need the Union to lose out both their final 2 games, which is asking a lot considering the form that Philadelphia are in. But they're still technically in it, but they've got to do a lot of lifting to get there. So, Kyndra, you were about to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, and based on Miami, I mean, I thought it was a terrible decision by Mascherano to switch his 2 center backs for that game. I mean, they looked completely discombobulated. They hadn't played together in months. They were short on minutes. You finally had 2 games where you had a clean sheet against New York City and you were on the road and only allowed a goal against Toronto. So you talk about sort of confidence, and like, you don't need to rotate your center backs. That's not the position. And those are young guys. Like, they were playing, what's his toes? Allen at center. Like, you don't need to rotate those guys. They can play that many games in a row in that amount of minutes. So I thought he left those guys hanging out to dry. And they were getting shredded in the first half by Chicago, and no help coming from the middle. You already know you're not going to get a ton of help from like Busquets when he's high up the field, and obviously Messi, wherever he is. But like, they threw the other young guy, I'm like totally having a brain fart. I have so many names in my head right now. Who's the guy that they brought on? Yannick Bright. Like, they put him in there. They started him in there to be able to have the fresh legs. He barely played in the game before, to run around. And then on some of those goals, he was like not even in the picture. So I don't know. It just seemed like weird coaching decisions. And Mascherano himself like contradicted his own thoughts from going from New York to Toronto and keeping some of the same guys minutes wise, because there was like some mojo there and a dynamic, and then switching it up in an important game at home. Like, why not rotate your other guys at that point? Why not rotate Busquets and Suarez and maybe Messi out of that game, or at least for part of it, rather than your back line? I don't know. I just thought it was poor decision when you're talking about these.
Like I said, I still think they'll be one of the most dangerous teams in the playoffs. When you have the greatest player of all time, particularly on rest, it becomes a much different scenario about Manny making a run in the playoffs. And to your point, Mascherano does have a lot of challenges, though, because mentally they do get stretched quite a bit in games throughout this year. We saw that when they came here and played us. I would say the one other thing about Miami that has surprised me is just the kind of averageness of DePaul so far. I thought there was going to be a little bit more of a pop, and I think he's falling to what a lot of players in this transfer window fall to, which is getting up to speed with the level, getting up to speed with their own fitness. And probably for him, he probably had this mentality of, I was just grinding it out at Atletico Madrid for years, that my coach, that kind of coach pushes you to your limits. And there might be a mental break for him where he's like, oh, it's going to be easy in MLS. I kind of like that those kind of players get overwhelmed. Like, no, I got to bring my A game or I'm not going to be as effective. And I think he's been a little bit not quite as good for them. They haven't quite found a position for him along with Busquets. So interesting. Like I said, it's going to be a fascinating one for Miami. They're not going to win the Supporter Shield, which I think is a big story. Given that roster, it shows how tough the East has been this year. and it shows that the ruthlessness of MLS and the game schedule will hurt you if you, to your point, Kyndra, aren't open to like shifting players around and getting players rest.
Hey, I got one question, then we can move on to the next thing. Manny, as a player, I'm watching halftime, right? Chicago's up, Miami's terrible. Davila has played really well, this young guy. DePaul and Davila both have their jerseys off and have traded jerseys at halftime. Before they walked into the tunnel, they each had the other player's jersey.
Wait, DePaul
I was like,
traded with the Chicago kid?
yeah, with Davila.
Oh,
But they had
That's
swapped
weird.
jerseys on the field at halftime. I'm like, I would lose my you-know-what if I was Berhalter. And then Davila was terrible in the second half. I'm not kidding. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I was
no,
just
I would never even. I don't even like
that.
talk to the players, but I do know this younger generation has a little bit different approach to it.
But that's what I'm saying. If I was Berhalter, I saw him walking in with the other guy's jersey at halftime, and you still got a whole half to play, and Davila like cost them their 2 goals.
I like it. The old school.
I would lose.
That's already interesting. But
I was smacking Tyler. I'm like trying to like motion to him because I can't talk because our mics are on, and I'm like, what the, like I would be so.
And by the way, that reinforces a little bit of mine. Where's DePaul's head at?
Well, exactly. Like, why are you doing that? Anyway, we can move on.
Final question on the Eastern Conference before we shift to the Western Conference and focus on that for the rest of the show. Charlotte get thumped 4-1 by Montreal, who's already been eliminated for a couple months now. A couple other big results. New York City FC beat New York Red Bulls 3-2. You mentioned it, Manny, a couple times. Chicago might be dangerous in the playoffs. Who's the most dangerous team in the Eastern Conference? Who do you expect to come out of the East at this point with just a couple weeks left in the season? Manny, I'll start with you then, Kyndra.
I mean, I'm going to be lame. Like I said, I've said this all year. I think the East is the better conference this year in terms of depth, in terms of strength. I mean, you've got Philly, you've got Cincinnati. I don't know how NYCFC is third right now. They really didn't look like they'd be in the top 4. Charlotte was looking great, and then have they lost 2 in a row now?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, Nashville,
after that 9-match winning streak.
Nashville, Orlando just don't feel like 6 or 7 teams in that they feel like they should be in the top 4. It's wild. Like I think most of the playoffs is set. So we get to the West, but in terms of like who could come out of that, all of those teams I mentioned have had runs this year where they could easily claim to be the best in the East. And Philly's done a great job this last month of saying, no, we are. So for the playoffs, it's going to be fascinating. I still think probably Miami and Cincy feel like the teams that should get to that conference final. But how can you not give Philly so much respect for what they're doing?
I don't know what to make of Philly, though. I mean, you get beat, what was it, 7-0? You win 7-0. I don't even know. Like, I can't keep track of.
Yeah.
And I said this on the broadcast, like the parity in this league used to be manufactured, right? With the salary and the roster build and the way it was like manufactured. It was intentional by the league. Now I feel like there's parity in this league when we look at the Eastern Conference because of the quality of the players. Not so much that like it's forced. It's like you look at this, and even when we're talking about the Eastern Conference, like to me, Toronto is not a 12th place team right now. The way Robin Fraser has them going, getting rid of Insigne and Bernadeschi, those guys, like there is a, but they just don't have enough time to make up ground. So even a team like Toronto, I think, can continue to be better in 26. So when I look at the Eastern Conference, Columbus is just on the struggle bus. And you got a team like Charlotte. I don't know. Like there's so many teams where I'm like, which team are you? Are you the team that went on the 9-game winning streak? Are you the team that got beat twice? And I understand you're playing a team that's already been eliminated, which we all know as Minnesota's going into Kansas City or against Kansas City this weekend can be a bugaboo when they've got nothing to lose and nothing to play for. It's a tough task. But I don't know. This East is going to be crazy. The only thing that's going to keep Philly on top is just the fact that they're already at 63 points and there's not that much left to play for, like games. And Cincinnati gave up a point, some points at home in their last game that they should have held on to. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, I think Kendra, I would say the parity is that teams are starting to figure out their DNA of their club, their identity.
Yeah.
And really play to those strengths. So again, I got to put an asterisk to that Philly game. I mean, they had
Sure.
a lineup that they didn't care about that game. They were so far in front of the East. They're like, we need to get ready for this Open Cup game. So I don't even think that's a real result, personally.
Got it.
Really don't.
I get what you're saying.
I would say Philly has been unbelievable,
Mhm.
defensively, offensively, physically. I think I think these teams are now starting to say we need to maximize who we are and what we are and play the identity of our club to compete against the Miamis, the Torontos, the Atlantas. And you're finding Atlanta and Toronto are struggling to figure out what their identity is with spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I think there's a nice balance, but the league in itself, not just the East, the West, you're going to get caught if you don't like both embrace your identity and maximize it. And again, I think the team's doing well. We kind of know their identity. That's why I like the East, though. I can't criticize Charlotte too much for losing 2 games in a row. I mean, if you look at it, they lost at NYCFC, who's been on a great run, and then they got a red card and gave up 4 goals and lost at home, which happens to everybody. So I still think those 7 teams in the East all can say we're pretty darn good. Like we really can make a run in the playoffs. And I think they have, even more so than the teams in the West, have a right to say that. You know, I don't think the West goes 7 deep. Maybe we go 4 or 5-ish deep.
Yeah, I agree.
Pretty cool that we're one of those teams at 4 or 5, but after that, it's not the same. I can't put Austin and Portland like Orlando.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is 7th right now, but feels like they're a top 4 team.
Yeah,
So
I would agree.
Across the Western Conference, some big results. We'll talk about the Loons draw in Colorado in a second, but that draw at the time looked like it might have hindered the Loons' chances to claim the top spot in the West. But San Jose beating San Diego, 1-0, and then Vancouver stumbling against Seattle in a 2-2 draw, a back and forth 2-2 draw that was really fun to watch and listen to on the ride home after our game. Kept things within reach for Minnesota in the top of the West. LAFC continue to be on a roll, 3-0 win over St. Louis, and they're probably the answer to that question that I asked about the Eastern Conference, the most dangerous team in the Western Conference, I would say, Kyndra.
I'm sorry, but with Son and Boanga, like that's going to be a problem for anybody. It just is. And they're fun to watch, and they have a similar, and you know what? I mean, maybe Cherundolo gets to go out on another high because like he's found a player that Boanga will pass to. Like, you know, Boanga, he doesn't like to pass the ball. I mean, that's the problem, is sometimes he just takes it all himself. He just dribbles till he's blue in the face, you know? So like he actually wants to pass. He finds out that he may actually get the ball back also if he passes to Son. So I don't know, like that's going to be an incredible, fun thing to watch down the stretch. And I'm with you. I think LAFC sitting in 4th on 53 points. They're going to continue to rise. What is it? They've scored their last 17 goals.
Yeah, across all 6 of their last matches. It's just been Son and Boanga.
And you probably have talked about this also, but I obviously wasn't on. But what Son is going to do for this league, I think, is greater than maybe what Messi has done in the sense of his personality. He speaks English. He wants to do interviews. He's totally bought in. And that's not like a knock on Messi. It's just they're coming in with a different mindset, in my opinion. And I did that first. I did that game at San Jose in Levi Stadium with 50,000 people, and just the energy there. And I know it's a very heavily Asian population in the Bay Area, but it doesn't matter. Like he's going to get that wherever, and he's just got that personality. LAFC is going to be fun to watch down the stretch. However, the top of this ends up.
I'm there with Son as a global superstar, particularly in Asia. I can't quite get there with the Messi comparison personally, but I like it. I like the hot take. All right, Jonathan, before we go into this, because I think this is now, we haven't done this a lot this year, Kyndra, but it's officially there. We're 2 games left in the season. We're in 3rd place, and the weekend results were unbelievable for us. So the first thing I'm going to go about LAFC is, yes, on paper, it feels like they are taking over the league. Jonathan, what's their last 3 teams they played?
1 second. Give me 2 seconds, and I'll pull up their schedule.
That's a good point. We should be doing that for all these remaining games, because that can
they actually have 4 games left. So
no. What's the last 3 they just won? I'm going to even go even deeper into giving you guys a little contrarian about. I'm going to flip it and not go with the how amazing this duo is, which they have made. They are historically amazing. But
the last 3 teams they beat: at Real Salt Lake, home against Real Salt Lake, and then at St. Louis.
Okay, and let's bring up, they've got 4 games. We only have 2 left. How many of those games are they going to be playing without Son and Bouanga? 2
2, yeah.
in the international break.
Yeah, Toronto and
Again, I
Austin.
am
And that
very
Toronto team
Minnesota-centric
as
here, but you look at where we are in the standings. You look at San Diego just lost at home, not scoring a goal against San Jose, who leaked goals for fun. You look at the fact that Vancouver had a game last night, has to play San Jose at home, has been dropping some points. Brian White went down with an injury.
yeah, their defense is all banged up.
Unlike the East, where it's kind of sewn up with the Philadelphia, I think the West is wide open. I think the number one spot right now, I truly see a scenario. We are going into LA if we take care of business this weekend. I'm not saying we control our destiny to win the West. I am saying, given the kind of adversity that all of these teams, except for us, have in this last month of soccer and MLS, I think we're in a great position here, guys. I mean, I don't usually talk about that, Kyndra, and he knows this. I don't like to project, but we're only 2 games left now, and we are 2 points out of first against teams above us that have a ton of adversity to get through the season. And LAFC, as good as they are, they really haven't played, I want to say, the better competition of the league with Son and Bouanga yet, and they're going to miss them for 2 of those 4 games. So I just think it's wide open, personally.
Let me put it to you this way, as we talked about the schedules. San Diego, what they have left, 2 road games at Houston and at Portland. Both teams that, if I'm looking at the standings, still battling for a playoff spot, still not locked up. Vancouver, they have, as I scroll down their schedule, 3 games left. At home against San Jose this weekend, at Orlando City, which feels like that could be the really tricky spot. And then they're at home against FC Dallas on the final day of the season, a Dallas side that, again, is still fighting for a playoff spot. And then LAFC, home against Atlanta United this weekend, home against Toronto FC, which could be a tripping spot because Toronto has been in good form lately. And then they close their season, 2 road games at Austin and then at Colorado. I think I'd rather take the Loon schedule of at home against Sporting Kansas City and then at LA Galaxy.
I think it is all there for the taking. And to your point, that getting that point in that second half and kind of turning around that game in Colorado sets up a really fun couple of weeks for the Loons, as long as we take care of business this weekend. Again, the great thing is we have to win a game at home that we're expected to win, which has been a little bit of our kind of tough. If there's a negative this year, it's been our home for kind of like games that are big in the league. And this is a big one for us, not for Kansas City, obviously. But going back to that, I really do, like I said, I'm gonna put a hold on this love of LAFC until the end of the year, because I want to see how they do with a little bit of adversity. Like I said, I agree. Son and Bouanga have been unbelievable. It's amazing. I think they've been easy teams to score goals against that they played in the last 3 games. And they're going to have to win without him to actually get the Western Conference title.
If Minnesota United doesn't get 6 points and end on 61, it's a failure. In your last 2 games, I'm just throwing that out there right now.
Yeah, I would say
like that's a failure not to get 6 points from those 2 games.
And it's game by game, because it's ultimately we don't deserve to win the West if we don't win this weekend against Kansas City. It's obvious.
Agreed.
I think the LA one becomes a little more complicated, just given the talent level of that roster. Playing away in the last games when they don't have anything to play for might ironically be the hardest kind of mental game for us. But you're right. But the exciting thing is, I really do think we will have a chance to be in it for the Western Conference going to that LAFC or Galaxy game. We're all these teams have it. I brought up the injury stuff. Every team, if you look at San Diego, particularly look at Vancouver, they're dealing with a bunch of injuries.
They just got Ryan Gall back.
Yeah,
but
that's how
3/4 of their defense is out now at this point. It feels like, I think.
Yeah.
So, it could be tricky for Vancouver down the stretch here. Final note before we jump into the heart of the Loons conversation. Matt Doyle over at MLSsoccer.com wrote about some things and had a few notables in one of his more recent articles. And he pinged his favorites for goalkeeper of the year and defender of the year, Manny. And shocker for Loons fans who tend to follow Matt Doyle's writing and how much he tends to not like how the Loons set up and play. He has Dane St. Clair and Michael Boxall as his favorites for both those awards. Your thoughts on Dane for favorite of goalkeeper of the year and Boxy for defender of the year?
I love it. I mean, we've shown a defensive identity pretty consistent all year that has kind of threw the league for a little bit of a loop in terms of I don't think they had a team kind of get set up and play the way we had, particularly earlier in the year. Ironically, we're going to talk about the Colorado game, which will have a little shift in our identity, but so deserving on so many levels. I mean, there's no doubt you have two guys that have been great leaders on and off the field. Boxel for 10 years in the league now, or next year in the league. And just week in and week out, giving our team an identity that has allowed us to have a conversation about being at the top of the West.
That was his first All-Star too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is like shocking because
But
I know that
yeah, but just remember so many
and I know we have a first row seat to Minnesota United, all these years. So it's a little bit different. And I understand they have more of a defensive identity, and the defense hasn't always been the strong suit for Minnesota in the past.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like if there was a positive, or if Minnesota was leaking goals, it usually wasn't because of Michael Boxell. He's usually, covering for something else that is happening somewhere else, and he's playing every minute of every game, and even at his age, and flying to New Zealand and all over the world and coming back. So, like, to me, I don't think that's a bad shout at all to have him as the defender of the year and Dane as the goalkeeper of the year. And there is an insane defensive identity to this group that starts higher up the pitch, as we all know. But at the end of the day, you can, the defense is the defense and the goalkeeping is the goalkeeping. And there isn't a coach I've talked to this year for any team, whether you're playing Minnesota or not, and they've talked about Minnesota and what they have to face every time and how organized and disciplined and purposeful that group is, and how hard it is to play against them, and you trying to find different ways to force them to have the ball and all these different things. And like it's all stems from Dane and Boxy, in my opinion, as far as like directing it from back in that position.
For sure. And yeah,
I mean, it's right. I think the one thing about Boxel, Kyndra, is that it's nice because he is kind of a slow burn in terms of he's not always smooth on the eye.
Yeah.
Like in a game by game moment, but once you start to kind of understand how much he affects both on and off the field and every day about the culture, like internally, it's just the guy through the roof is one of the more amazing human beings I've ever met. And his belief and discipline to kind of always lead and come back and make sure the guys are hungry for that kind of discipline, structure, all that stuff. I mean, his relationship and connection to Eric this year, along with Will Trapp, has been outstanding. I mean, they've really kind of embraced the vision of we can play a lot of defense and be fine. So,
totally agree.
It's very deserving. So it's nice to hear Matt, acknowledge that. So.
Finley's is a mission-driven pet brand redefining what it means to do business with purpose. Founded in 2016 by two former special education teachers, Finley's was created to address the staggering unemployment rate among individuals with disabilities, a community too often left out of the workforce. Every purchase of Finley's products supports real, paid job opportunities and community development for people with disabilities through the company's inclusive employment initiatives. From job coaching to community engagement, Finley's is creating a future where everyone has a seat at the table and a chance to thrive. Follow Finley's on Instagram @GetFinleys. Yeah, it was cool to see those guys in there in the shouts for favorites for those awards as we get towards award season part of the calendar for MLS. Let's jump into this Colorado draw 1-1 between Minnesota and Colorado at the weekend. A very defensive-minded approach for the Loons in the first half. Changed things in the second half with a little bit of a formation shift, Manny. Let's start off with your guys' general thoughts on this game. And then we'll dive into kind of the tactical switches and what that means for the Loons going forward. But general thoughts on a 1-1 draw at the weekend. Manny, I'll start with you then, Kyndra.
Yeah, I think it was a tale of two halves. I think if you watch the first half, you probably as a fan were like, how is this a high-level playoff team? And really it was different because we've had games where we've defended really well on the road and then had chances and kind of said, oh, we're sneakily actually more dominating the game than people realize just because we don't have the ball. But lately there was a little bit of a shift. You could say it was personnel. You could say it's just like it's tough to mentally defend for 90 minutes all year and play with that same identity. And I think it basically was a first half that we didn't like. It wasn't a good first half. It was not the same kind of like defend, but still had 3 or 4 good chances, or even have leave at halftime with the higher expected goals. We did not have that. We got dominated, and we felt, I think, a little bit of the weight of our Open Cup loss in Chicago and be like, oh my gosh. And I don't want to say we hit rock bottom because our team is having an amazing year. By the way, we still have not lost 2 games in a row.
League games
in the
back
league,
to back,
which is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is exciting is the tale of 2 halves. That second half, coming out in a back 4, making some both tactical and managerial change for Eric, I think was a big deal. And the guys just seemed looser and excited to just play a little bit differently. And I think it just gets us excited as a club that even this late in the year, even though our identity and DNA is going to be defense, we're going to win by Dane and Boxall and this group being hungry and organized and structured. But I think it was a big 45 minutes for this club going into these final 2 games in the playoffs, because I think it allows us to get excited about thinking of different ways maybe to win games as the adversity of the playoffs loom. And essentially every game now is a playoff game. So a really big second half for the club, and a big point against a tough team that I think was desperate for points, and we still walked out with 1 point. So it was a big result.
Kyndra, overall thoughts?
Well, and very rarely does anybody go to elevation and come stronger in the second half.
Yeah.
And as the game goes on, and making those kinds of rotations and subs and tactical adjustments, as Manny just alluded to. And I listened to Eric Ramsey's post game that night after the match, and just saying, and just having the willingness and the understanding to say we weren't getting it right in the first half. We were getting dominated in areas of the field that we're not used to getting dominated in. So you switch to that 4-back and push a number higher up the pitch in a way that, like, not in the way he pushes one up from 5, but in the way that where it's just somebody is there more consistently in some of those areas that he didn't feel good about, and that the coaches had that conversation, or however that went down, had that talk throughout the first half and made that change, and that the guys could carry that out, because that doesn't always happen when you've played this in the same style and formation for the most part the entire season, to be able to make that adjustment on the fly. And oh, by the way, look at the subs that even if they came on in the 84th, 85th minute, the guys you're bringing off the bench, you've got Hassani Dotson back in the fold. Like, that's also like, you're not playing the same 15 guys that you've had the whole year. There's some serious changes to that roster. You know, Bongi starting up top in the way that they could still find a way to get that point on the road. Another ridiculous banger. I mean, I don't know, like,
I know.
I don't hit that in my sleep.
Harris's goal of the week. I'm sure. I mean, we don't always get a lot of votes for goal of the week, but it's got to be in the top 3 or 2.
But the fact that he's done that, I mean, come on,
twice now in three regular season games.
I mean, it's like people are asking Eric Ramsey if that's like why you scouted the guy. Well, hell, like, you know, like, no chance. But like, if he's got that in his pocket, sure, why not? Like, I mean, sorry, Hassani, you're not the what were we calling him when he was
Bangers
hitting
only.
those? Bangers only. I mean, not sorry, he's gonna have some competition in that position now for that. But no, I just thought you could not have asked for a better result on the road at this point in the season in Colorado, and playing as not great as you did in the first half, to come away with a point from that. Like, I think, and then have a week to prepare for Kansas City, where the schedule's kind of been crazy, get over the whole Open Cup deal emotionally, physically, and before the international break, when guys are going to be, you know, some guys are going to be going away and stuff, I'm sure. So I thought that was, it was good because they won in a different way. So I thought you could feel really good about that.
So let me ask you about the switch, the tactical switch for Minnesota, going to that back 4 in the second half, open things up a little bit, playing in a very different way than we've seen them all season. And that goes against the defense, not necessarily goes completely against the defensive-minded approach, but you're taking off a defender, putting on some attacking threat going forward. Is that a dangerous switch at this point of the season, Kyndra, to completely shift how you set up going against the team, considering the talk of this of the Loons and how they set up all season was this is a setup that could play really well in the playoffs. and now you're switching that 2, 3 games before the playoffs start. Is that a dangerous switch to make, or is that something that they just necessarily they had to do out of necessity because of injuries and the way things were going in that first half?
I think it's not dangerous. I think it's brilliant because and not even, let's say even if, and maybe we'd feel differently, right? If they didn't pull this off 1-1.
Yeah.
But at the same time, just the way they looked in the second half versus the first half, and just, I think brilliant in the sense of the willingness, the trust that it shows your group that you can make that change, that you
Yeah.
trust them to make that change, that you trust them to pull off that change in the middle of a game, even if it's at halftime. Like, I think that this just gives you another weapon in your pocket going into the postseason if that happens again. And the guys pulled it off. They looked better in the second half. I don't see a negative from it because you
Okay.
can go right back to what you were doing.
Yeah.
And it's going to depend on the personnel. It's going to depend on injuries, guys coming back to fitness. You get Carlos Harvey back for the postseason, but I don't know how fit he's going to be as far as what he's usually asked to do in a game, how many minutes. Like, I don't know all that, how when he's coming back to form. So even with Kelvin, you get him back, let's say, like, I don't know how many minutes he's going to be able to go. That's a tricky one with that injury. So I think it just gives you more flexibility in what you can do and real confidence in the group that you can put them in a different position and they can play well and pull it off if they need to.
Manny, is the back four here to stay for the rest of the season based on personnel and how the injuries have kind of changed things over the final couple weeks of the season? Or do you see the Loons going back to a back five at some point here over the final 2 games of the season?
Yeah, I just kind of have to agree with Kyndra. I just like the flexibility. At the end of the day, my gut would say that we'll go back to, or we'll keep the same back four, particularly because we're going to want to be on the front foot against Kansas City, which we'll get to in a second. But no, we need the flexibility. Ultimately, in modern day soccer, I mean, we talked about Chicago. Greg switched up to back three or /5 against us, matched us man for man, and they really took it to us. So I just think having the belief at the right time of the year that you can be flexible and sometimes use tactics to match up against a team is really important. Again, there's a really tough balance as a coaches because you don't always want to worry about the other opponent. You want to worry what you're doing, the habits you're doing. So ultimately, I'm in the same boat of it. I really like the way Kyndra explained that. I think it builds a lot of confidence. It builds a belief in the guys that you got to remind yourself that you have to go out there and play soccer, whatever the system is. You guys are responsible for how it works and what goes on. But in the back of your mind, you do have a coaching staff to say, you know what, we got to do something a little different that's going to give us an advantage. And it's so important, whether that's a placebo or reality, you need to have that flexibility in modern soccer now that you can go to different systems and find ways to get results. And we're at a time in the season where, like a lot of teams with adversity or dealing with, players leaving or coming and not being quite as fit as you'd like them within the transfer window, that you have to be ready to adapt to get results. And I think that is where I feel like it's good for the club and the team is that we know we have that identity that we can go to, but it's nice to have other options, and we need them. Like I said, the playoffs are a tough grind. It's not like the regular season. And the guys have to be ready for a lot of different types of teams we're playing against, and the adversity of you lose and you go home essentially as you make a playoff run.
So the opposite side of that, the attack that was really struggling for chances in the first half. I think it was only one shot, none on target in the first 45 minutes. Obviously, that changed in the second half with the tactile switch. 11 shots, 3 on target in the second half. Things changed and opened up a little bit. The game got a little bit more open end-to-end stuff in the second 45 minutes, Manny. What did you think of what you saw out of the attack once the switch happened? Is that an attack the Loons can certainly lean on, especially if they're not going to have Kelvin Yeboah for a couple more weeks here?
Well, I think certainly Robin's much better as a false nine in a back four, just because the two wide guys are higher up the field, and he's more of a hold up nine versus like kind of running behind or run the channel. So in this game, right away, I think Joseph really popped. It was one of his better halves and games I've seen all year. I thought he was outstanding, kind of getting up and down the line and creating some really good space with some long dribbling runs. Bongi seemed really excited to kind of get higher up and get in the box and create some chances. And even Joaquin and Robin really pressed well. I mean, we kind of essentially pressed higher up out of a kind of almost like a 4-4-2. But it allowed us late in the game when we knew Colorado was going to have a push. I mean, if we went up 2-1, great. but Colorado was at home and they were desperate for their points, and we kind of ended this game like almost as 4-5-1. That really limited them a lot of chances, except for the very end. They had a nice little spell. So ultimately, I think some guys popped with their personalities of play that looked good. And again, I do. My gut says that we will keep some type of formation like this going to Kansas City, partly because of how good we looked on the front foot, and we have to kind of be on the front foot this weekend. So there were some guys individually that I thought popped, and Nectarios had a great game. Do we call him Nectario,
I think
Triantis?
he said Nectar.
It's
Yeah.
from the. I mean, he should be in the Odyssey. Like his name is amazing. It is awesomely Greek name. So
It doesn't. If he wasn't Greek, that would be incredibly disappointing.
But long story short, there were some really good individual performance in that second half, and it's rare that you say that in a game where you really could have had this podcast talk about how bad we were, because that first half was that bad. I mean, there was not a player that I thought was good in that first half. Even Dane, I mean, as good as he is, I thought the goal, he would like that one back. It was a great shot, but I think it was pretty hard and low, kind of where he should be in the wall. But he came back in a great second half.
Kyndra, your thoughts on what you saw from the attack in the second half and what it means for the Loons going into the final 2 games of the season?
I think I agree with everything that Manny said, but I also think that in a certain sense, Minnesota United has been blessed with players like a Robin Lod, because he is like a true will do whatever is asked of him since the day he walked in the door, and he hardly makes a peep. And he's been asked to play a number of different positions, and he does all of them well. And so I think that you could do the things that they did, and the revelation of Joseph Rosales going back higher up the pitch, which originally, if you remember, when he started playing under Adrian Heath, I think he was a left winger. He was higher up the field. Then they moved him to that left back role, and we were like, whoa, what's happening here? And then now he's embraced, obviously, the left wing back role, and something he also does for the national team. But he's completely capable on the ball, higher up the pitch, and finding spaces in the middle. Pereira, to me, has been one of the best players for the Loons all year. So those guys all are just adapting again to the situation that is presented to them. And you have the flexibility of some of these guys being able to play. I mean, Bongi went from a right back position, which he is embracing this year, back to a 9. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I just think there's this method to the madness, and the real, the way that Eric Ramsey has preached all year to this group and what he's asking them to play in different positions, and not just different, but very different positions, asking a lot of these guys to embrace those different roles, contributed to the way they looked in the offense, in the attack, in the second half of the game. And so I just think that I don't know. I can't say enough that it just gives you flexibility going forward, because Manny's right. Or what if you're in a 3-game series and you're playing the same team 3 games that like it's like the Stanley Cup Finals. Like, you're all of a sudden getting in fights and stuff, and everybody knows everybody, and you're like, nobody likes anybody, and you got to be able to maybe switch your system and switch your guys and how they look and what you're asking of them. And so I just think it's just more flexibility down the stretch.
Couple more notes on this game before we go to the Sporting Kansas City match. Triantis, you guys have mentioned a couple times his goal, an incredible goal, another team of the match day inclusion for him. That's 2 and 3 regular season appearances for him. We talked earlier about Manny, Rodrigo de Paul not really settling in as easily when he came over mid-season. Triantis, the opposite of that. He's settled in pretty dang well. Obviously, the 2 great goals, the assist in San Diego will help that, but his overall performances, I thought, have stood out for a guy who just got to this league, who just got to this team, is probably still trying to figure out his teammates' names, and he settled in really remarkably well.
Yeah, Ken, I brought up the Paul more as a conversation that I'm not in the day-to-day internal kind of culture of Miami, but I do get access to culture here, and I know we have a guy who is so excited to be here, who is really impressed with MLS and really excited and understands that this is like an opportunity. Like, he has a hunger and excitement about being here and being a part of this team. And it shows on the field. One of my favorite things so far about him is, you're right, it usually takes 4 to 6 weeks of fitness level. And he's kind of in this 2 to 3, because I think he's, that hungry. And that's not like just coming here and start playing hard now. I think that means he was preparing to come here. He's preparing for life in Minnesota for several weeks before the deal finally got done. And then ultimately on the field, I'm really enjoying. He has some great vertical dribbling ability that has been really nice for our group. I mean, he really sometimes turns out of space in the middle of the field instead of playing backwards, just really pushes the ball up a little bit quicker than we've have in terms of solving it through passing. And he's just been great, and he's very versatile. He can play center back. He can play in the midfield there. So it's been a great boost to the team. And, again, I still think that second half, I brought up Fitz. I do think that system really brought out him. He had about 15 to 20 minutes. And again, I think his fitness level in Colorado, it's tough, to really, even if it's 45 minutes, trust me, he was kind of struggling probably to get through the game given the altitude. But that system allowed him to show some of his qualities. So that gets us more excited about him, not only for the rest of this year, but certainly for next year when you really want that type of player to feel comfortable and feel like he's going to contribute. So, no, I mean, it's a big boost. He certainly has added a lot of physicality. He's added a similarity to how we played last year, but to show that he and Trapp can manage a two-man midfield and not to have always having to get Pereira higher up with load is a big deal.
Speaking of Will Trapp, speaking of that midfield, Will Trapp was substituted out in the 84th minute, Kyndra for Hassani Dotson, who clearly just doesn't understand what the meaning of season-ending injury is, as he returns 6 months after tearing some or having a knee injury, and he just makes a miraculous return in the middle of the season after a serious injury. An impressive rehab from Hassani Dotson. Really good to see him back at the weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's not a surprise to any of us, I think, that he was committed to coming back and making sure he was fit and ready to go. And I'll tell you what, I was at a few trainings throughout the season. I try to come every time I do a game, match day -1. I never saw him out on the pitch, earlier in the season or even around, but you just know that he's working. He doesn't have to be out there. And as he got closer, I'm sure he was out by all the guys. And that's another one too, right? I mean, you can speak to this as a player. To be around everything and not be able to play, it's a real mental challenge, right? To keep yourself going and motivated. So the fact that he comes back in 6 months, he's fit and ready to go and hungry, and he sees what this team is doing. There's like zero reason not to be motivated to come back and be a part of what this group is doing on the field and wanting to be a part of the success that this team is the road that this group is on. So credit to Hassani, but no surprise in any way, shape, or form to me that he is back and ready to go. And it's kind of like, when is Ricky Puig coming back? Is he coming back? Like, I
don't think he's coming back this season.
No.
I mean, they had his name, somebody said, on the Leagues Cup roster, and I was like, what? But because I don't know how many you can put on there. But that to me just tells you all there is. And I know they're different players and maybe their injury wasn't exactly the same, but Hassani Dotson was on a mission the second he went down with that. And it just refreshed my memory. During that time, remember the beginning of the season, there was some conversations about him not wanting to be here or not signing or asking for more money. And Manny, you clearly know this better than I do. But then once he was here and he was all in. There was no like, hey, I'm trying to force my way. From my perspective, I'm on the outside looking in. So again, like, credit to him. After that, all the shenanigans with whatever the agent, you never know what's going on with all that rigmarole. But credit to him for getting back, and what perfect timing to get an addition like that back in your group and have some more depth when other guys are struggling and have played all these games and you start to get exhaustion.
Yeah, he's a beast. I mean, let's call it that's his DNA. That's why he's so good, and that's why he's been so good for our club. I think the exciting thing is just having him get back, but the reality of the playoffs at this time of the year is it's a 2-month schedule. So every week he's going to get better and better.
Yep.
And with these international breaks in October and November, depending on our playoff run, it just every week adds another element of he'll get better and better for the next 2 months, which is really this season. Hopefully has 2 more months in it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can add to this team going down the stretch. So let's jump forward here. Saturday night at Allianz Field, the final regular season home game of the year for Minnesota. Crazy that we're already at that point. Feels like just yesterday the season was starting back in February, but Minnesota hosting Sporting Kansas City. Kyndra, you'll be on the call. 7:30 p.m. kickoff for that one. 7 p.m. pre-match show with Dan Terrar and myself over on the radio side. I'm looking forward to this one. Obviously, a big one for Minnesota, but Sporting Kansas City already eliminated from the playoffs, down in 14th place in the Western Conference. They have been well and truly out of this race for a very long time. Over their last 12 games, just one win. Over their last 5 road games, no wins, all losses. They've been outscored 5-17 in that, or 17-5 in that time. It's been a really rough stretch for Sporting Kansas City. They've obviously got some front office work that news that came out the other day. So some uptick in news for them on the sporting side, but on the field, it's been a little rough for them. Dejan Juvelic, 18 goals coming over. He's been an excellent signing for them. Just obviously hasn't been enough. Kyndra, what does a team like this, who's been eliminated from the playoffs for so long, have left to play for with just 2 games left in their season?
Well, I think we can see it from other games, and we've all seen it in the past. That can be a huge tripping up point because they have nothing to lose. Sporting Kansas City would always like to stick it to Minnesota United, whether it's at Minnesota, whether it's at Kansas City. I just think that these are the games that you have to be leery of. And if you're Eric Ramsey and company, you're making sure that you're focused on yourselves and the points at hand and just understanding that the top of the table in the West is still a thing. If you're Sporting Kansas City, quite honestly, I don't know what to make of this team and this club, like not just this year. And I know there's question marks going forward. I have no idea with the coaching search. And I know that Kerry Zavagnin has been in charge and he was there as long as Peter Vermees was. He's been a piece of the fabric of that club and that organization. And now he's the interim. But I don't know what to make of them. And I haven't known what to make of them for the last couple of years. I just can't figure it out. And all the conversations we've ever had with Peter Vermees and I don't know. Like I almost feel bad because I don't know how long and what it's going to take for them to turn this thing around and get the quality of the players and get the players bought in. You brought in Dejan Jovelic, which clearly he was coming off some record numbers at LA Galaxy, but he also had these insane wingers that created him for the most part. And even prior to the wingers coming to LA Galaxy, he just could sit in the box and finish the chances. And like, was that a bit of a facade of how good he is? Or I don't know, Manny. Like, I don't know what your take is on this group, but I think it's going to take a while to get this group maybe back on the right track as a club.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right in the macro sense, Kendra. It's definitely probably now a kind of tear it down, build it up officially. Like we've moved on from Peter, and this year kind of was your kind of therapy year to figure out how to do that. But what I would say is, I do think this weekend is dangerous because I do feel like it's almost like a coach's bump with the hire they made this week.
Yeah.
You commit to David Lee, you commit to a vision, you commit to now every guy playing against Minnesota this weekend knows that he's watching them and assessing what's the future, not only for the coach stuff will come after the season, but they're on the field playing for this new guy now.
And he's coming from a very successful organization that has shown an ability to be successful across a couple different generations of players.
So in a weird way, there is a massive potential for a coach's bump without a new coach this weekend, based on the hire that they made this week. And that's a big deal. And I think it's kind of a probably exciting time for them to now kind of give a little new vision to Kyndra. What you just said, what do they do? Well, they just hired somebody that is one of the more respected kind of executives in the league to now give them a new vision post Peter Vermees. I think on the field, Jovelic is somebody to watch. I think Suleimanov is very dangerous and very good at creating chaos. Tomney's always been a tough one for us over the years. He's found goals against us. So they have weapons. There's no doubt this is not just like, hey, Minnesota, get through this game and then see what happens against the Galaxy in the final game of the year. We have to play well to beat this team. And to your point, it's sometimes tricky playing against a team that doesn't have anything to play for. And now I think it kind of subconsciously, even though it's not on the pitch, has a coach's bump.
Yep, I agree with that. I guess I didn't view it in that way, but that is a great way to view it because they are all auditioning. These are contracts, these are positions, these are roster spots. They're trying to impress a new guy, and Kerry Zavagnin might be as well. I have no idea what his thought process is going forward, but yeah, I think you never take the team that's already been eliminated lightly, in my opinion, down the stretch of a season, but you definitely don't when you've got a team that's trying to play for David Lee and get their ducks in a row and make a good impression.
Yeah.
Kyndra, earlier you said this could be a tripping up point for the Loons if they don't take it serious enough. How important is it to, as we talked about, the attack from the Colorado game, to get out on the front foot as quick as possible and to kind of establish dominance in this game earlier on rather than just letting the game play out as we've seen over the majority of the season? Games will play out throughout the majority of the first half and then the Loons will strike late in. How important is it to get an early goal and establish a foothold in this match early on?
Well, I think it's just good for the energy of the group. You've had a week to prepare for this game, nothing midweek to take away your attention emotionally or mentally or physically. And I think that it's good for the group to just come out with a certain level of energy and for the fans because there's an expectation there, knowing this is the last home game of the regular season, knowing, how you want to finish strong and where you want to be in the Western Conference and that you had sat at or near the top for much of the season and that you're trying to work your way back in there. Obviously, trying to host playoff games is of utmost importance for the group as well. So I think coming out on the front foot and having the energy for the group, for the crowd, we've all seen it at Allianz Field. There's no shortage of fans and energy. But when there's a lull and there's not much action or there's not much pace going forward or not much in the transition moments, like it gets quiet in there. They're just scratching and clawing for something to cheer for. And they're smart soccer fans, so they know what to cheer for, whether it's a defensive tackle or defensive structure, or defensive shape. It doesn't always have to be on the offensive side of things that can get the group going. But capitalizing on the moments when you do get forward is going to be so key because the longer you let any team hang around in this league, it's not good. We've seen that come back to bite too many teams. You don't take your chances, you don't finish your opportunities that you create, and you just let that other team hang around. That can come back to bite you real quick. So it should be a good one though, and another beautiful day. My gosh, I'll take it.
Manny, the importance of getting an early start and establishing a foothold in this match.
Oh, I think it's insanely important until it's not. Meaning that, yeah, I think we will play a little bit different than we played in the last couple of months, where we will try to start on the front foot. We will have a different formation than we played at home for at least several months, if not the entire year. But ultimately, there is another opponent we're playing, and there will be adversity, and it may or may not work. I hope it does. I think we're going to have some good energy, and I think we're going to start brightly. But if we don't, this team needs to figure out a way to win a game that's kind of a must win because it keeps us in the picture for the West. So ultimately, it's not the only way we can win this weekend. We have 90 minutes to play soccer. We have 90 minutes to find a way to win. And that's the most important, is walking off the field with 3 points. But you are right. I mean, when you have a team like Kansas City, it would be very nice to start the game on the front foot, making sure that you let them know that this is a tough place to play, that we're a team that seriously wants to win the West. And that comes down to, having a good 90-minute performance.
I don't mean to add any pressure on the boys on the field on Saturday, but the Loons, in their final home game of the regular season, they're unbeaten in their last 5, and over those last 2, they've scored 9 goals. So no pressure at the weekend.
Yeah.
Question for you guys in these final 2 games, and I held this question off for a little bit from our previous conversation earlier on the show. Is it more important for the Loons to have good results at the weekend or to see good performances? I know two of those things can usually go hand in hand, but do you want to see good results or do you want to see really good performances that give you confidence going into the playoffs, Manny?
The answer is both. I think you really want a result this weekend because we're still in the West. I mean, we still have a chance to win the West. So it's going to be, for me, result is most important this weekend. Depending on the Galaxy, I think it becomes more now about where that group is going into the playoffs a little bit more. But I would say when you have a chance to win something, you got to go for it. So it's going to be the result trumps the other, but with a little bit of an asterisk to understand that you've got to build a group to make a run in the playoffs too. So they are connected and they're combined. But at this point, and you kind of got my excitement of we talk about the Western Conference, and we're right in the thick of this, of winning something. So we've got to come off the field with 3 points.
Kyndra?
Results for me, because I think you want to get those points that you can get. And I don't even care. I shouldn't say I don't care, but I don't think like as much about the performances of just these two games as the results because I've seen what the team has done all year. So I feel more confident about what Minnesota United has done all year and feeling like they've bounced back or they've figured things out when they've struggled a little bit in their performances in the past. They've been able to find answers in general, whether it's moving guys around, whether it's bringing guys in, whether it's, as we just saw recently, changing formations. So for me, it's all about the results and getting the 6 points, however it is that you get there. And then like the performance, even if you came out of the LA Galaxy and you didn't play your best game, but you came away with a point on the road. I mean, 6 points would be nice, but even a point on the road, let's just say hypothetically, I would feel good enough about how the whole season has gone and confident enough in this group that the performances will find their way in the postseason. That's kind of, I mean, that's how I feel about it. I would say results absolutely first, and then performances would be nice. But the other 32 games of the regular season that they've played have shown me enough that I think there's going to be quality there in the postseason from a performance perspective.
For sure. Get the results and do your part to at least give your chance to stake a claim for the top spot in the West on decision day, which is one of my favorite days of the soccer calendar. Before we close out the show, do want to get your thoughts on a couple of news items that came out while we were recording. Tom Bogert, previous guest on the show, reporting some tough news for Houston and the U.S. men's national team. Jack McGlynn underwent surgery on a foot injury, so he'll miss the rest of the season, and he'll miss the call-up that he had earned back to the U.S. men's national team roster for the October friendlies. The U.S. Soccer team announcing their roster for these games. Notables: McKennie, Turner, Tessman, and Brandon Aronson returned to the squad. Manny, I believe I texted you the full roster a little bit earlier. So if you've had a chance to look at it, your thoughts on what you see out of this roster. Zendejas, Roldan keep their spots. So good news for Christian Roldan, who had an excellent performance the last time with the U.S. men's national team, earns a return call up.
Yeah, no, I'm always excited because, one of the nice things about the growth of our national team is I do feel like he pushed the pool and he pushed trying a lot of guys. And I know that upset a lot of guys because sometimes the results weren't quite there. But when you look at this, it shows that there is some depth and he's got some choices and some tough choices. And I think it's a pretty good group given maybe Musa is a surprise not being in there. I am excited about Roldan just after one game showing his qualities of leadership that he might need that. I think obviously Diego Luna has been kind of one of the bigger stories of the kind of moxie of the team. So him being in there is interesting. I like Miles Robinson back in there. I think it's exciting to see Tanner Tessman's been outstanding in Europe. He just had a great goal in the Europa League. I think it's going to be a good group. It's exciting and very similar way to the Loons after our Colorado result in that that last game. I think we showed some real quality and excitement of the way we played and some of the guys. And now that's extending to bringing in some other guys from Europe and MLS that are hungry to contribute. So to me, it looks like they'll be tough games, but it's going to be a good group. I mean, I think it's a good group. I would highlight, particularly just for U.S. soccer fans, when we're talking about the future, Alex Freeman in this list.
He's been so fun to watch this year.
He has got such a huge ceiling, and it just keeps getting better and better. So I'm really excited for somebody like him to be in this because that's not only just the short term or even for the next World Cup cycle here this summer, but for the future of the national team.
Kyndra, where do you stand on confidence in the U.S. men's national team? 8 months out from the World Cup on home soil?
By the way, Kyndra, understand I'm a sucker. It's one game we do well, and next thing I'm all in again. So
I'm not sure if confidence was in my vocabulary when I was thinking about the men's national team. I'm confident that I'm going to attend, a World Cup game of some sort and enjoy it as a fan. So I'm excited about the World Cup in 2026. I'm still incredibly nervous and probably I'm a little more the glass half empty, unfortunately. I would love to be proven wrong. I just think it's such a short time for Pochettino to be making these assessments. And I don't know if that's on him or who that's on because when he was hired, it's just a short time, and to be have as much inconsistency but I understand he's trying to evaluate so many different people and asking people to step up, and then all the controversy when Pelosi decided not to come and other guys, it's just there's just so much. There's not enough time to have this much drama. It's just I just don't have time for it. So
But you're like a fan, Kyndra. Time, we've got 8-9 months.
but there's not that many times where they're together. I mean, national teams already are hardly together ever. And so I'm not saying they can't come in and blow the doors off. And I'm excited for all the guys that have gotten opportunities. I love that. I love the MLS guys that have been called in time and time again. I love that they're getting in the mix. I think they've proven themselves. I think they're worthy of it. I don't think, the whole Europe versus MLS thing is a joke, because I do think that these guys have proven their quality. And clearly Pochettino is focused on culture and chemistry and attitudes and personalities. Not as much maybe as the quality of the skill itself, because of course you need really good soccer players. But I think that he's put a lot of emphasis on that. And I think that's great, because I lean on that heavily. I watch that when I watch games. I'm always like, okay, that I could see, I'm watching his body language. I'm watching how he's reacting to his teammates. So I'm excited for the prospect of it, but I don't know that I have confidence yet, but I'm excited for what could happen. There are just a few spots on this lineup, this proposed, depending on the formation they decide to throw, that I'm a little nervous. Like, if just one guy in that spot goes down, then where are we in different spots? I don't know.
But the only one that sticks out to me is Dest. He must be injured, because he'd be in that list for sure.
Yeah, I think he would too. I mean, because they need him, obviously.
I'm
Anthony
excited
Robinson
to see
is,
Morris
thank
again.
God.
Apparently he's playing really well in Europe. I think
Yeah.
that's a nice one to add into the mix. Sands feels a little bit like one I was surprised, but the way I look at it, Kendra, is I think we have a bigger pool than Mexico and Canada, and I like that. And how do we use that to our strength? Because I do think like we have maybe not the very top end of some Canadians now doing really well, and they kind of have a tight group that they kind of know exactly who they're going to call in. We get to debate it, and I want to look at that as a positive. Mexico and Canada don't quite have the same depth that we have, maybe at the mid-level of it all. And I think we have to use that to our strength. And I think Pochettino needed and will need to take some time to still understand that's the strength of our U.S. team, is going to be our mentality of the depth of our pool versus, if we're just looking at this region, the other teams in this region. Now, when you get to the global game and you talk about the top 5 teams in the world, it does become like the mountain feels so high. Because again, you're talking about teams like France and Spain that just make no sense with the level of players that they're producing. The only way we're going to get to compete is by getting that pool to understand when they get called in, they are part of our machine of an American mentality. So I still look at the adversity we had this summer and the lack of confidence as a potential positive in the long run, because we need to have these debates. We need to be pushing these guys. We need Pulisic to maybe have that tension with Pochettino now, so they can be in line, lockstep barrel in 8 months. Like I said, if this was 3 months from World Cup, I'd be super nervous. This amount of time and seeing this depth of a team that he's calling in and some of the guys he's leaving out, I'm actually excited. Like I said, I don't want it to be perfect. I actually don't want this to be the perfect time. I want it to be perfect in 8 months. So I'm a little more bullish based on looking at the pools of players that he's gone through, and that there's some real depth there, that we have a strength of our national team versus a lot of teams around the whole world, by the way. I mean, there's teams in South America, and even Brazil right now is lacking some real depth in their national team pool.
I'm just saying, I think there's something to be said for when you can consistently bring in the same groups and have an idea, or the same players, because then they can work together, because they work together so little to begin with.
Kendra, and I say this nicely, like we had Tony Meola and I were talking on this show, like, yeah, you're going back to like 4 years ago when we had these guys, and we thought 4 years later that they were going to be in Europe, and that was just going to be our group every time, and that's the kind of team we were going to have, and we all wanted it. It just didn't happen. They didn't develop into like maybe the superstars we thought, but they've all developed into really good high-level players within whatever culture they're in or whatever environment, either Europe or MLS. I still think that's the real DNA of our national team. It's unfortunately not going to be a Lamine Yamal yet. We're just not there as a country in developing that type of level. So instead of lamenting about it, we have to embrace what we're good at. And we have to kind of remind ourselves there's a lot of things we're still good at in this country in terms of developing a lot of players. Unfortunately, it's still not at that very, very top level. That's life. I mean, in some ways, teams have won World Cups. I think about 2006, Italy, similar roster, similar reality of a team kind of fighting it, and they create the identity of their country to go through and win. I think we've got to get back to that. And
now they can't get back to the World Cup.
Well, there you go. Maybe they need to look more domestically again, like they're.
Okay, so you're talking talent. What percentage do you think is mentality?
I think it's both. Like I said, I think, there's only a few teams around the world, like the Frances and Spains of the world, where the talent level is so high that it skews the culture and mentality. But pretty much most other countries, I think we get caught in the U.S. thinking like everybody's like Spain and France. And it's not. There's not a lot of, everybody else kind of equals out pretty quickly.
I'm just saying, when you don't have the talent, there has to be a certain mentality, right? About the crest or about not losing, and which is always the argument from some of the older generations, is that they weren't more talented than those other teams, but they outworked or out. So like just that, like we're just different in the generations that we are now than back then. Hey, Jonathan, mark it on your calendar. We're having another podcast 3 months out from the World Cup, so I can gauge his nervousness.
Yeah, no, my nerves will be there, but the reality is that's part of this process was kind of almost us having a little bit therapeutic about, again, I think a lot of us thought 4 years ago we would be in a different position with a very specific pool of players that looked young and great, and they've developed great in a different way. They've had different journeys into Europe and different teams, and every year they're learning with the teams of battling to try to become significant in Europe. And everybody's got to be excited about Pulisic's play right now. He's been dealing with adversity of the national team stuff. He's been dealing with adversity of it didn't quite work at the top league in the world. And it's working at an amazing, historically great club at AC Milan now, which might be the right fit for him to be the best version of himself come 8 months in the World Cup. So, again, I think there is a real lament about we're not quite where we thought we'd be from 4 years ago. There's no doubt. I think we thought a lot of those guys in 4 years would be kind of at the top tier of superstars in the world. And that's insanely hard to do. And it's insanely hard to do when the countries in Europe that I'm talking about do it overnight. Their pool of players is just at a different level. So ultimately, like I said, I think it's a good roster for this camp, though. I really do. That'd be my answer.
I'll make sure to check on Manny's nervousness levels as we get to the World Cup. Kyndra, I'll check back on your financials after having to figure out a way to afford World Cup tickets, because those prices are just absolutely insane.
That's a whole nother show, by the way.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Well, who do I know? Who do I know at Fox that's also a part owner of Minnesota United?
Yeah. That's a whole nother show. Like, are we ready to host as a country and to capitalize on all the air? That's makes me nervous, probably more than on the field, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking forward to the build-up, though. It should be fun. We'll see how the World Cup goes, but just want to get your guys' thoughts on that. Was looking for quick thoughts, ended up turning into a whole different conversation that I was expecting, but I love it. I love it. That's what the podcast is here for. Kyndra, appreciate having you joining us this week. Looking forward to hearing you on the call this weekend for Minnesota United Sport in Kansas City, the final home game of the regular season for Minnesota United. First spot in the Western Conference still on the line should the Loons find a way to win out this season and get a couple of results going their way. We're looking forward to watching it all happen over the next couple of weeks across Major League Soccer. Manny, good stuff talking to you. We'll talk to you on Saturday at Allianz Field. And Loons fans, appreciate you listening every week on the podcast feed. And then final thanks to the production staff, Grace Dearson, Kyle Hayward, Evan Entler, for putting this on every week. We'll talk to you next week.